Welcome to the Story Makers Podcast. I'm Talina Adamo. Today, I'd like to share an article with you. The day I realized my script wasn't working. One of the hardest lessons I've learned as a filmmaker came the day I realized my script wasn't working the way I thought it was. And I didn't discover it behind a camera, in the editing room, or while directing actors. I discovered it during a simple table read. As writers, we spend so much time with our stories that we begin hearing them in our own heads. We know what every line means. We understand every character's motivation. We know the backstory, the subtext, and the emotional payoff we're trying to create. The problem is that our audience doesn't live inside our heads. The first time I began taking table reads seriously, I discovered something uncomfortable. What sounded amazing in my imagination didn't always sound amazing out loud. I remember sitting there with script in hand, excited to finally hear my story come to life. I had spent days polishing dialogue, tweaking scenes, and convincing myself everything was finally working. Then the actors started reading. Within just a few pages, I realized I wasn't hearing the movie I had imagined. Dialogue that felt natural on the page suddenly sounded awkward. Characters I thought were clearly motivated confused the people reading them. Jokes I expected to earn laughs were met with silence. At first, that can be frustrating. You spend hours, days, or even weeks writing a screenplay only to discover that some of it simply isn't working the way you hoped. But that's exactly why table reads are so valuable. They reveal problems before production begins. And trust me, finding a problem in your living room is much cheaper than discovering it on a film set. Looking back now, I honestly can't imagine skipping this step. Once production starts, every issue becomes more expensive. Maybe an actor struggles with dialogue that doesn't feel natural. Maybe an entire scene has to be rewritten while cast and crew wait on set. Or even worse, maybe you don't discover the problem until you're sitting in the editing room months later, realizing you never captured what the scene actually needed. Those are expensive lessons. A table read allows you to make mistakes while the only thing you're spending is time. And time spent improving the story before filmmaking is almost always time well spent. One of the biggest mistakes new filmmakers make is assuming feedback is an attack on their creativity. It isn't. At least not good feedback. Good feedback is information. It's someone showing you where your intentions and your audience experience are not matching. That doesn't mean you need to change everything. In fact, some feedback should absolutely be ignored. Every filmmaker eventually receives suggestions that pull the story away from what they're trying to create. Part of becoming a better storyteller is learning the difference between a genuine problem and a creative disagreement. I've learned that when multiple people become confused at the same moment in a script, I should pay attention. When multiple people misunderstand a character's motivation, I should pay attention. And when multiple people react differently than I intended, I should pay attention. The goal isn't to please everyone. The goal is to understand what your audience is actually experiencing. One thing that surprised me over the years is that the biggest problems in a script usually aren't the ones people point out directly. Sometimes no one says, "The scene isn't working." Instead, they stop leaning in. Their attention drifts. They hesitate before reading a line, or they laugh at a moment that was meant to be serious. Those reactions can tell you just as much as spoken feedback. As storytellers, we're trying to guide an emotional experience. If the audience's emotions aren't lining up with what we intended, something in the writing is creating that disconnect. That's why I encourage beginner filmmakers not to become defensive during a table read. Become curious instead. Ask yourself why one scene captured everyone's attention while another seemed to lose it. Why did one character immediately connect with people while another felt distant? Why did one emotional moment land while another quietly slipped by? Those questions are often more valuable than the solutions people suggest. I've also learned something else. When you're reading your own script silently, your brain automatically fills in the gaps. You hear the emotion you intended, you imagine the pacing, you picture every expression on the actor's face. But the audience doesn't have access to any of that. Neither do your actors. If something only works because it's playing inside your imagination, then it probably isn't on the page yet. That's one of the greatest gifts a table read can offer. It forces you to experience your story the same way everyone else will. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also an incredible feeling because now you finally know what to improve. The best filmmakers I know aren't the ones who think they're always right. They're the ones who stay curious long enough to discover where they might be wrong. Stories aren't written once, they're discovered. Every draft teaches us something new. Every table read uncovers something we couldn't see on our own. Every honest conversation with readers or actors helps close the gap between the story we intended to tell and the story our audience actually experiences. That's why I no longer fear feedback. I welcome it. Because every genuine note uncovers another opportunity to make the story stronger. Sometimes all it takes is hearing your script read aloud. That was the day I realized my script wasn't working. More importantly, it was the day I started becoming a better storyteller. Thanks for listening to the Storymakers Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd love for you to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes about writing, filmmaking, storytelling, and the creative journey. You can also follow along the Storymakers on Substack, Spotify, and on my Talina Adamo YouTube channel, where I share new articles, podcast episodes, behind-the-scenes updates, and resources for storytellers. I recently launched the Beginner Filmmaker Blueprint on Teachable, a step-by-step course designed to help aspiring filmmakers write, plan, and complete their very first short film. For a limited time, you can enroll for 50% off. Use the coupon code FIRST50 at checkout to bring the price from $99 to just $49.50. More than just a course, you'll join a filmmaking challenge and a supportive community of creators who are taking the same journey. Ready to make your first film? Click the link below in this article. Until next time, keep creating and keep telling your story.